11 days, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul will become governor of New York State, and she is trying to reassure all of us that she's ready for the job.
It's not something we expected or asked for, but I am fully prepared to assume the responsibilities as the 57th governor of the state of New York.
Now, it's a position few people have been in, suddenly stepping up after a disgraced governor resigns. But our next guest knows exactly what that is like.
Governor David Paterson took over the state after the resignation of Governor Eliot Spitzer. Governor Paterson joining us this morning. Wondering, first of all, nice to have you back on Good Day New York.
Thank you.
Do you have post-traumatic stress syndrome hearing this? What's going on? What goes through your mind?
I've had a couple of flashbacks when there's an immediate change in government, as what happened with me, and the budget's due in 13 days. It was amazing all the other subjects that were coming up that were not related to government that I had to deal with. But we were able to push through, and Kathy Hochul, who I know very well, is very well equipped to run this state. She was an administrator in Buffalo. She was a member of the House of Representatives serving Western New York, and she worked on the governor's team for 7 years.
So I know that you have said that you think it's, and this is your word, suspicious that Governor Cuomo is taking 14 days to transition. Why would you say that? Why suspicious?
I don't know if that was really the right word. I just think it was that whatever the governor wanted to accomplish, he can accomplish with a new governor there at the same time. She's obviously going to respect some last-minute changes or situations that he wanted to straighten out so that everything is done. But it's just 2 weeks, and by that time, I think she'll be more than ready to take the reins.
But you've been in that position, and you say the word suspicious. I mean, could he do something? Are you anticipating he would do something that we would all have to live with?
Well, I'm just hoping that he and his staff members use the time to be of assistance to the new governor and to provide counsel on some situations that are coming up, such as the Supreme Court decision yesterday with regard to rent regulations. But if they're going to sit around and continue to call people up and yell at them about remarks they've made in the media and that kind of thing, then that isn't productive. And so I just think that the time will go by in no time, and Governor Hochul will take the reins and will have more than an ample opportunity to prepare herself.
You're right. Those 2 weeks will probably go by very quickly. I want to get your insight on this relationship between Lieutenant Governor and the governor. Governor Cuomo handpicked Ms. Hochul back in 2014. It's been, what, almost 7 years? So what I think a lot of people want to understand is, how can she say that she had no idea that any of this stuff was going on? Are those two roles so far removed that for almost 7 years you didn't see anything? Because yesterday we spoke to Assemblymember Ron Kim. He said that she shares his staff. Is that what happened in your situation?
There were staff who helped both myself and Governor Spitzer. Governor Spitzer probably gave me more responsibility than any lieutenant governor ever had before or since. I ran the efforts on minority and women's business enterprises, energy policy, domestic violence issues. And most governors and lieutenant governors basically are hugging in the camera the first couple of weeks and then basically don't speak to each other for the rest of the time. That isn't just Governor Hochul and Governor Cuomo. That is pretty much in every situation that's actually existed.
But does that make sense, though, that a lieutenant governor doesn't speak to the governor in case something happens? That person would have to step in without missing a beat. So I guess it just doesn't translate as well.
Bianca, I never said it made any sense.
Okay.
And Governor Spitzer and I talked all the time.
Yeah.
And that, a lot of that helped me. He had me in the budget process, in all of those meetings, so that when 13 days stood between me and an unbalanced budget, I had some information I wouldn't have otherwise had, and I always thank him for doing that for me.
Yeah.
But what I'm just saying is, human beings, are human beings, and sometimes they just don't get along. And often you're picking a person based on politics or regional empowerment. So you get a lieutenant governor from Western New York. Before that, he had Bob Duffy, who was from Rochester. He wanted to cover that upstate region. But they might not be the person you would pick if, let's say, if you were picking a deputy There's a personal relationship. So the lieutenant governor position itself is precarious.
Gotcha. Let's talk about impeachment. Do you think Governor Cuomo needs to be impeached by the legislature? I mean, in his speech the other day when he resigned, he said he was trying to save the state money and time and energy and distraction. What are your thoughts?
I don't see the necessity for an impeachment of the governor at this point. He has stepped out of the way. He has fallen on his sword and taken the sacrifice to let the state move on. However, he was not the only one who was acting improperly, and those investigations should continue. And there's no reason that they shouldn't, because the Attorney General's report talks about the breaking of state and federal laws. Well, the governor wasn't the only one involved in that, and I would assume that they're going to go forward with some type of investigation, as they did when Governor Spitzer resigned.
Right. Do you talk to Governor Spitzer at all?
I haven't talked to him in a few years.
Gotcha. And by the way, should we just mention, like, this will be a first woman governor?
Yes.
You were a first too, Governor Patterson.
Yeah, I was the first African-American governor of New York and the fourth African-American governor in the country, and I was the first blind governor in New York. There was another governor who was blind, but he was governor for 11 days. And my view is, if you haven't passed a budget, you were never really a governor.
Big accomplishments there.
All right. Thank you so much. Former New York Governor David Patterson, we appreciate your perspective this morning.
Oh, thank you very much.